on YouTube? And today we got a brand new episode of Quickscoping for Christ. I'm fired up. We are on episode 52, and this is our End Times study Isaiah episode. Before I begin, this is Quickscoping for Christ, so we're going to tackle the quickscoping part real quick. Black Ops 7 is out. It's been pretty fun. The maps are iffy, I will say, but no sbmm and the non-disbanding lobbies. That feels amazing. The sniping is fun. The bolt action DSR sniper is hard to hit a clip with, but it is fun to use and it can be really smooth. It gets some collats, does some good damage. The semi-auto snipers in the game, or guns that you can use as a sniper like the Warden or Outlaw, those are pretty good, but they're almost too good and they don't quite feel like, you know, traditional snipers. Usually the semi-autos are either weak or they got some kick to them. They're take a little more skill to maneuver. But these ones are kind of the best of all the worlds, and they're almost too broken, and you can't. It's like not really quickscoping anymore. But overall, it's fun. The maps are kind of iffy. I don't like all the maps, but I'm sure most of that will be resolved when 10v10 is added to the game. And maps like Homestead and Exposure or whatever, it's like a small construction map. Those ones are pretty fun, as well as Cortex. I really like Cortex as well. And I finally hit a triple head collat. That has never happened before to me on any game, and on paper that's probably my best clip of all time. It's really hype. After many, many years of flinch kind of causing me to choke clips, now it finally helped me out. I was due, and it helped me flinch into a triple head collat. So that is hype. Anyway, Isaiah. This is a book of the Bible that comes a few chapters or a few books of the Bible after Psalms. It is in the Old Testament, and it is one of our first and most vague descriptions of the end times in the Bible. Many of these prophecies are descriptions of things that are to come to the Israelites, who at the time had rebelled against God, and God was so angry with them that he was going to give them into captivity towards the Babylonians. And the Babylonians were a polytheistic culture that were very sexually immoral, and they're described as almost a rebellion against God. That was the whole zeitgeist, was that humanity was going to come together and show God how good they are and how much they could get away with. So much of Isaiah is prophesying Babylon falling and being punished for their rebellion against God. And this talks about the literal Babylon, which is not even a real city anymore. The prophecies that have to do with Babylon have already come to pass. Babylon has become a ruin. But throughout the rest of the Bible, Babylon is used kind of figuratively as painting a picture for future cities and cultures rebelling against God that have completely thrown the law to the wayside and have just done kind of heinous things to each other and towards God and His Word. So, the Israelites rebel. Isaiah contains many prophecies pertaining towards the captivity they're about to go in because of their rebellion against God. They too had become somewhat of a pagan nation. So, God sent them into captivity of the Babylonians. There's many prophecies about that, but Isaiah also contains prophecies of the future, like end times, the day of the Lord. This is one of the first mentions in the Bible of the day of the Lord. Literal and figurative prophecies about Babylon, so the current actual nation of Babylon, but future nations that are like it. And this is a description used in Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible that actually talks about the end of the world. There is a mention of a mystery Babylon, a great city that parallels this city in Isaiah. It talks about the man of sin, the devils casting out of heaven, and also the Messiah, which is to come in the New Testament, aka Jesus. But we will not be talking about that in this video, as Jesus has already come for the first time, as talked about in Isaiah. And we are doing this series to learn more about the end times. So, starting in Isaiah chapter 2, this is one of the earliest descriptions of the end. And this part I'm actually going to read for you. So starting in chapter 2, this is what Isaiah son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established. So in a lot of end times prophecies, there's talk about the Lord's temple being established in a great mountain. As chief among the mountains, it will be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Many peoples will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." So this talks about God's temple being established and then people following his ways. Now, it's not very specific. Like I said, this Isaiah is a very vague description of the end times, but I believe that this is talking about Jesus' millennia reign on earth after his second coming, and we'll talk about that more in the future episodes, mostly in Revelation. Then the day of the Lord is talked about in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 6 to 22. Israel will be punished for walking in the ways of the world, sin, and will have to come back and seek God and beg for repentance. The day of the Lord is described as terrifying. People flee and hide anywhere they can to get away from the dread and splendor of God's majesty. Our next end times pertaining prophecy in Isaiah comes in chapter 13, a prophecy against Babylon. So, this starts by talking about God amassing an army to destroy the entire land. It mentions the day of the Lord being near, and it describes destruction from the Almighty. This day is described as being very distressing, cruel, wrathful, and with fierce anger. People will be in terror and writhe in pain. The land will be made desolate, and the sinners within it will be destroyed. This has kind of already happened. Babylon is already pretty desolate. There's not really anything going on over there. The stars of heaven and the constellations will lose their light. So this is talking about, this is paralleling with the end of the world now. God says he will punish this world, the world, not Babylon now, the whole world, for its evil and sins. He says he will make man scarcer than gold. We're already starting to see this happen a little bit. Obviously, man is not scarcer than gold now, but we're seeing birth rates in developed countries decline drastically. Brutal things will happen to women and infants. And other nations are described rising up against the city, the Medes. The Medes attack Babylon, basically, descending from a mountain, and brutal things are supposed to happen to their women and infants. It does not sound like a good place to be during this time. And then it is said that this place will be overthrown and never be inhabited again, and only wind and animals will live there. Moving on to chapter 14. This chapter starts by talking about the exaltation of Israel and Jacob and the slaying of the king of Babylon, who many speculate to be the Antichrist, and seems fitting, but I think more realistically in chapter 14, this is kind of talking about Jesus being exalted, Israel. As many times in the Old Testament, the title Israel is actually referring to Jesus and his coming. And there are many parallels and descriptions of the devil's story in chapter 14 of Isaiah, such as the morning star, the son of dawn, says he will ascend above the heavens and raise his throne above the stars of God, making himself like the Most High. It says he made the world a desert and overthrew the world's cities. So that sounds a lot like the devil right there, but could also parallel, and there's good reason for that, the man of sin, or as many call him, the Antichrist in the end times. Then it says he is cast out of his tomb, denied burial because he destroyed his land and killed his people, and his offspring will be slaughtered. He would not let his captives go home. So that chapter covers the king of Babylon and his fall. Then in chapter 21 we have another prophecy pertaining against the end of Babylon, but it doesn't seem to have any end times tie-in. This seems to be more talking about the literal nation of Babylon at the time in the Bible. No really end times parallel there. Then in chapter 22, we have a chapter that contains a prophecy against Jerusalem and speaks of how the nations will turn against God's people, Judah, and they will be sent into other lands to suffer and die. I believe that this has already happened, and I'm not even talking about a second great war. I think that it happened during that time, but also in history leading up to that, as the nation of Judah have been persecuted several times throughout history. Then in chapter 22, we have a prophecy against Tyre, which was a huge coastal harbor society that was massive for trade. merchants would come there. The ships could easily set up right there and make trade really available with all of the nations and land around Tyre. And Tyre is still a city in Lebanon today. So I'm going to talk to you about the prophecy containing Tyre, because this is an actual city now and during the Bible, but this chapter contains a prophecy against Tyre. But the words and statements here are more so aligning with the mystery Babylon mentioned in Revelation than the Babylon mentioned in chapter 21 of Isaiah, using phrases such as, "O wail, ships of Tarshish, be silent, you people of the land, and you merchants of Sidon, whom the seafarers have enriched. She became a marketplace of the nations, fortress of the sea. When the word comes to Egypt, they will be in anguish at the report of Tyre." This is pretty much the same thing that happens in Revelations. The merchants of the sea, the tradesmen, everybody's wailing over the fall of Babylon because she enriched many of the businessmen of the world. Called a city of revelry, whose merchants are princes and whose traders are renowned in the earth. Also parallel to what is talked about in the end times prophecies and Revelation. God talks about destroying it, and then at the very end of this chapter, it is also compared to a prostitute after her fall. It will be forgotten for 70 years, and then the Lord will deal with Tyre, returning her to trade as a prostitute, and her profits will go to those who live before the Lord. So right now, Tyre is part of Lebanon. Lebanon is not a place you really want to go to right now. Its economy has been quite bad since 2019, and it is just over an hour away from Beirut, where a heinous explosion took place in 2020, I believe. And that wasn't really talked about that much, even though it was a very, very serious explosion, causing much destruction, killing several people. Tyre has certainly fallen far from what sounds more like the America of today. Like back in the Bible times,
so cool
Tyre was described as a first world country right now, like America or China, I should say. And so this chapter can also serve as a cautionary tale for first world countries that kind of exalt themselves in financial gain and kind of, capitalism over like God and morality. Chapter 24 talks about the Lord destroying the earth. There's not much symbolism here, simply talking about how people are too sinful and that a curse consumes the earth and therefore must be destroyed. That is the cost of sin, the price of sin. It is a very physical depiction of destruction, and it says it will be the same for all people. This is not a prophecy pertaining to one nation that was sinful in the Bible, but all the people of the earth. Few will remain, it says. And it ends with the mention of the Lord Almighty ruling on the Mount Zion with the elders. And this kind of ties into the 24 elders mentioned in Revelation. Isaiah 34 mentions the day of the Lord and his vengeance and the overlap between what he says about the end times. Land becoming a haunt for jackals, the sky rolling up like a scroll, the stars in heaven being dissolved, and the heavenly hosts falling. This time, the nation of Edom is used like the Babylon in Revelation. Then we go a long time without any prophecies pertaining to the end times in Isaiah, but more so about Jesus is coming and about the nation of Israel at the current time in Isaiah. What was going on talks about them going into captivity and what is going to happen to other enemy nations of them at the time. Finally, we are left with Isaiah chapter 65 and 66, which are the final chapters of Isaiah in the last prophecies we have in Isaiah as well. So, in Isaiah 65, verse 17 to 27, God reveals the intent to create a new heaven and a new earth. A new heaven and new earth, the old things will not be remembered. He will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people to be a joy. Talks about all the nice things that we hear about heaven growing up. There will be no more weeping and crying. There will be, infants will no longer die young. 100 years will be considered young. He who fails to reach 100 will be considered cursed. things like that. They will build houses and dwell in them and plant vineyards that will be their own, not to be taken or used by other people. This is a really nice visual of paradise right here. The people will have days like a tree, and his chosen ones will enjoy the work of their hands. They will not toil in vain, like talked about in Genesis. They will be blessed by the Lord. Their children will not bear misfortune. Before they call, the Lord will answer, along with their descendants. This chapter ends by saying, the wolf and lamb will feed together, the lion will eat straw like the ox, but dust will be the serpent's food, the devil and his followers, and they will neither harm nor destroy on all of the Lord's holy mountain. Then we got Isaiah 66. The Lord says, he will make heaven with his hands. He will destroy those who oppose him. This is a common theme in end times prophecies. A big rebellion where the nations assemble under the man of sin to fight against God, but God assembles a great army and destroys them and casts them into the fiery pit. And so also saying, and I, because of their actions and their imagination, am about to come and gather all the nations and tongues, and they will see my glory. In chapter 65, verse 2 to 3, it also says, all day long I have held out my hand to an obstinate people who walk in the ways not good, pursuing their own imaginations, a people who continually provoke me to my very face, offering sacrifices in gardens and burning incense on altars of brick. So that part right there, the using their imaginations and going their own way, and not a good way at that, I think is very pertinent to a lot right now in our current societal, zeitgeist or whatever. We're creating a lot of distractions and things that we don't need that take us away from God. You can insert that, through things you see in your own life, but you're seeing a lot of AI development. People who are really smart are kind of using their imaginations to create things that intercede between man and God. And I think that is also a sign of the end times, and we will get into a lot more theories about that further down the road in this series as we talk about the abomination that causes desolation as brought up in the book of Daniel, which is coming up, and how that kind of intertwines with the beast out of the earth and the beast out of the sea talked about in Revelation. And then in verse 20 of Isaiah 66, God says he will send signs to distant lands, I love this part right here, who have not yet heard his name, thus answering the what about the person living far away, in the cave, has never heard about, God? Does he go to heaven or hell? God will send signs to those lands to give them the knowledge of God, or just plant a seed to get that faith started. And he closes by saying that those who rebel against him, their fire will never be quenched. So, overall, Isaiah is pretty vague. It's very confusing, even for me, but it really lays a blueprint and foundation for the rest of the end time study. Because a lot of the prophecies in Isaiah have already come, but they kind of symbolize the prophecies that are yet to come about the end times, and the nations who have rebelled against God, and the final rebellion against God coming in the end times. This was a great first episode because it lays the foundation for the rest of the series. Rome, which is a nation that already had a great rise and already kind of came to fall, there was a lot of time between that and Babylon. And people say today that the first world countries like America are starting to fall back into that pattern. This is going to be a recurring theme in the series, is the theme of patterns. Patterns repeat throughout history, so a lot of the stories in the Bible tie into today very well. We're becoming more of a pagan and polytheistic nation in America, and there are strange problems, not problems that just come with being a living creature, having to provide, having to work hard to, eat food and shelter, and dealing with the elements like weather. Problems beyond that, problems that seem stupid and we shouldn't even be dealing with, start to arise in, pagan and polytheistic nations. But anyway, that is the first episode covering Isaiah. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned because we are going to keep unpacking the end times on this channel. I love you guys so much. God bless y'all. Peace out, and I'll see y'all next time.